right away. A crew of sweepers could keep it alive. No, China, however, is built. They will soon exceed the United States in number of interstate style highway miles, and most notably, they're building major roads into western China where there aren't people yet, with the belief that if you build the road, that part of the country will develop more quickly and integrate more quickly, which is one of their great concerns, that these far-flung precincts are not integrated politically. They want to do their own thing. And so roads are one of China's solutions for this problem of national fragmentation. And India, too, actually. That was one reason for the road in Zanskar, the part of Ladakh I was in, was they call it a tribal area. So these people aren't like the Hindus who are the majority Indians. They're one of the little groups that doesn't. They actually say when they leave home, they say we're going to India. We're going to India next week, as though they weren't already there. So this the road building is a solution in lots of places. Governments see it as a solution for fractured nations. Yeah, over there.
Thank you very much for this conversation. Now I'm very eager to read the book. I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
But
thanks.
I am curious, Ted, about your experience of going to these different places. I assume that sometimes you were not able to speak the local language.
Yes.
So how did you go about connecting with the local people and understanding their expectations, frustrations about these roads being built or not, and about your own experience of trying to have this participant observation having in sometimes a barrier of language. So did you find any common thread in human nature around this relationship to roads?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a really hard one. Como tú sabes, hablo un poco de español. Y así empecé mi libro. So Spanish is my best foreign language, and maybe that's why I started in Peru, because I know how important it is to speak to people in the language they prefer. You can't, unless you're smarter than me, and really, really good with languages, it would be hard to do that everywhere. So that probably influenced my selection of countries. It probably tilted me toward Commonwealth countries, because in Nigeria people speak English. In India people speak English, even if it's not their first language. The first time I went to East Africa, though Kenya's a Commonwealth country, the editor of the New Yorker agreed to pay for 2 months of Swahili lessons for me. I don't think they would do that anymore, but and I didn't gain fluency, but I learned enough to know when they were talking about something that would interest me, and I could say to somebody who spoke English, "So what was that about?" And that kind of had to do. So yeah, great if I had spoken Swahili or some of the mother tongues, the Luo or well, I guess Swahili would have been good enough. That's what the truckers usually speak with each other. In China was the only country where I had a translator the whole time, which I would love to have not had to rely on her, but she was great. And I think if you get a good enough translator, you can do great things. One of the books I admire a lot is Anne Fadiman's The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down, about a Hmong family in Bakersfield, California. And to speak with the family, she needed a translator, but she had a great one. And her quotations are fantastic, and I've talked to her about that. And she said she would have been sunk without such a good translator. So Are there? Yes, of course. People have things in common all over the world, and it's not just that cursed clock that woke me up in on the Rio de las Piedras in near Puerto Maldonado. There's this clock made in China that on the hour plays a different snippet from a classical song, and it woke me up in this river settlement because it was right above my head, and every hour during the night it would do Für Elise, it would do Auld Lang Syne, Beethoven's Fifth, and then 3 years later, on the Ugandan-Kenyan border, my truck driver's second wife put me in a bed, the only bed in their apartment that had mosquito netting. I was so happy. I fell asleep, and then that freaking clock, the same clock, woke me up all night, same clock. And I said, "Where did you get that clock?" And he said, "Oh, it was a wedding present. I got it for her in Dar es Salaam." And I was we live in a global culture, but I think that's not what you were asking me. What I learned is people want to be connected, especially in places that consider themselves behind we who have so much pavement here, and I just found it everywhere. As you know Peru quite well, I know that, and there's a guy there, an anthropologist, who was very articulate in explaining all the bad things that an interoceanic highway would bring. And I said, "So, do you have meetings about this here?" And he said, "I can't talk about that here." He said it would make people too angry. And I guess you can talk about it in certain circles, but you just have to be maybe careful going out into the town square and announcing the dangers of this road. But so yeah, that universal desire to be able to move and to connect and to expand one's horizons. I do think that's universal. Though a lot of those Tibetan monks are working hard in the other direction, to the direction that says you don't need to know other things about the bigger world, but the kids who bring food to their monasteries don't feel that way. Yeah.
Just a word about working in translation. It's often not. Also, like I was just working in Mexico, and my Spanish is good enough I wouldn't need a translator, but then how much am I really understanding about people's experience in rural Michoacan? Even if I understand the words, what am I really getting? Is an issue that you can kind of, when you have to work with a translator, as I very often have. I've ended up writing about my translators sometimes. You get to know the person well, and often there's a strongly political element to the, if you're in the middle of a conflict of any kind, and you can end up sort of reflecting on the limitations of your own knowledge as you sort of reflect on the translation, what's coming through, what's not coming through. I worked in places where there are 3 or 4 languages. You need someone to get from the local language in Africa somewhere to Portuguese, and all that reflects the reality of your benightedness, your limitations, and all the things that get lost in translation, and it's almost like you can dramatize that by writing about the process of trying to find the translator who doesn't intimidate the people, and like that kind of thing. Where when it's more direct, you blunder in with your Spanish. There's like an illusion of transparency, which is, I don't know,
false.
Yeah, like a lot of illusions.
Right.
Time for one more.
Okay.
I haven't read this one yet, but I know this is a question I had when reading New Jack too. You deal so deftly with all of these